Hey everybody! So because I hadn't seen my in-laws in so long, I didn't really do a lot of talking during the footage that you just saw, so I thought I would come on and do a little talking portion where I told you a little bit about the trip to Mexico that I just took over my spring break. So one of the coolest things about our trip to Mexico in terms of just travel was that we had a whole bunch of money saved from refunds for a trip that we weren't able to go on earlier. So we got to fly like really nice flights. Like I've never flown like business class, first class before, and it was really, really fun to do. So that was like a really special thing that we got to do for this trip. So we started off our trip to Mexico on a Friday evening. I was supposed to work earlier that day, but because it was a bit of a slow day, I got called off, which was really nice. It didn't mean that we could leave any earlier because our flights still left on Saturday regardless, but it did mean that I had a much slower inroad to the day. I got to finish up my packing, I cleaned the house. I basically did like everything that I wanted to do before I left town and ended up leaving for my vacation in a really good place. So, because we were flying out of an airport outside of Washington, D.C., which is pretty far from our house, we decided to drive down on Friday night, even though we were leaving on Saturday morning, and stay at a hotel overnight. So, we had a nice drive down there. We were leaving at a good time of the day after we fed the cats, and then we got checked into our hotel. We were staying in a nice hotel, and one thing that really bothers me about some nice hotels is that like nothing is included, and it doesn't make any sense because I feel like if you're paying for like a really good experience, all the stuff should be included. So like breakfast that morning wasn't included, which was okay, but the next morning wasn't included, which was okay because we were leaving at like 3 in the morning, so we wouldn't have been there for breakfast anyway. But like you had to pay for Wi-Fi, you had to pay for parking, and it makes no sense to me. It was a really nice room in the hotel that we stayed at, but it wasn't like so nice that it was worth not having Wi-Fi or having to park in a garage where we had to pay for it. So I never really understood that. But we got settled into our hotel, and then Noah went out and got some banh mi for dinner from a local Vietnamese place, which was delicious. And we just had a chill evening. We watched some YouTube videos on the TV. I would have watched them on my phone, but no Wi-Fi. And so we did that, and then we went to bed at a good time because the next morning we had to get up for our flight. We had a super early wake up on Saturday morning for our flight. Our flight left at about 6 a.m. So we woke up at about 3:30, which was very tiring. I am definitely not a 3:30 in the morning person, as I'm sure really not many of us are. But we were already prepared. I basically didn't unpack because I knew we were going to be leaving so quick, and so we just got up, threw the rest of our stuff in the bag, took showers, and then we left for the airport. And it was the flight was on time. Everything went smoothly, which was wonderful. And that's when we got to sit in our nice like business class seats. And I feel like the business class experience should be the standard experience for flying. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was great. Like, I fully recognize that it was great. But it also seems like it should be really standard. I mean, we got a basic meal. You know, I had a yogurt bowl, and it came with some, like, fruit and stuff on the side. There was a seat that was actually, like, comfortable to sit in where you could curl up or stretch out. You had enough leg room. And that's basically the business class experience. Like, those are 3 things that you should just have when you're flying. I think you should be able to get a free basic meal. I'm not talking about like 5-star food here. I'm talking about a basic meal. And you should be able to have enough leg room to stretch out. You should be able to have a seat that like anyone can comfortably fit into. So I thought it was kind of silly that this is like such a luxury experience when that's what it was. But it was a really comfortable set of flights. So we flew from Washington, D.C. to Houston, and then we had a short layover in Houston, and then we flew from Houston to Monterey, and both flights were extremely smooth. We had a good time. The second flight's very short, so there were just like a couple snacks on the plane, and we got off the plane and we met my in-laws at the airport, and we went right out to lunch to just like a little seafood based restaurant in Monterey, and it was delicious. We had some delicious tacos, and for most of the rest of the day, like, we went back and we settled in, and then in the evening we went out to dinner at an Argentinian restaurant where we had a lot of steak. It's a very meat heavy kind of city, so we had a lot of meat and it was very delicious. I was very tired, and I definitely got to a point at dinner where I was like, I just really need to go to bed. It was a long travel day and I was just so tired. But I still managed to get to bed at around the normal time, really staving off some of that jet lag, and we had a great first day in Mexico. Then Sunday was our first full day in Mexico, and it was a very laid-back day. We basically stayed in the whole day. One member of our family just wasn't feeling great, so we had a couple of really low-key days while we were dealing with that, and we stayed in all day. We relaxed. We cooked dinner together at the house. I played with my in-laws' dog, and I hadn't actually seen that dog since they moved, which was about 5 years ago, so it's been a really long time. I felt like she was still a puppy when I saw her last. And then, yeah, we cooked dinner, and then I believe we watched Bohemian Rhapsody that night, which Queen is one of my favorite bands, so I thought it was very odd that I hadn't seen Bohemian Rhapsody yet. Absolutely loved it. I thought it was a phenomenal movie. So then Monday was another kind of low-key day. We were initially thinking that we would go and do kind of like a mountain hike because the mountains are right there outside of Monterey, but one of our family members still wasn't feeling well, so we instead decided that those of us who were feeling good decided to go and take a little walk in this park around their house. And so that was like the main thing that we did that day, is we like went for a walk in the park, and it was kind of like 3 parks that were connected in a really nice area. They were being kind of updated, so the first park that we got to was like the most up to date, and then the rest were, I think, going to get worked on eventually. And it was really beautiful, and we actually got quite a workout. We got like 7,000 steps in, so it was awesome. And then I think that night we ordered some food, and then we watched Law & Order, so it was another nice chill night. Now the highlight for the trip for me was our trip to Don Leo Vineyard, and that's what we did on Tuesday going into Wednesday. So we woke up on Tuesday morning, we had breakfast, and then we immediately set out on our drive. Don Leo is kind of in the middle of the desert in Mexico, and it is about maybe a 2.5, maybe 3 hours total based on the stops that we did from my in-laws' house in Monterey. And it took longer because we wanted to stop in Saltillo for lunch, and Saltillo is kind of like a larger city outside of where we were going and was supposed to be a really good food town. So we had gotten some good recommendations for where to go for lunch, and we parked in this kind of like mall in Saltillo, and then we took the elevator up, and I think it felt like we kind of just randomly chose where to go, but it ended up being a great restaurant, a like Italian kind of Roman style restaurant, and it was amazing food, and the view was absolutely spectacular. So we all really, really enjoyed ourselves. Getting out of Saltillo was another story. The traffic was ridiculous. I never really got used to the country differences in driving compared to how I would drive. I didn't really do any driving while we were there, but the traffic patterns for me were very confusing, and I never really got used to it in the whole time that we were there. But I found even just being a passenger in the car as we were attempting to get out of Saltillo to be very stressful. But then once we were out of Saltillo, we drove out into the desert, and it was a really cool experience. And we finally got to the welcome sign for Don Leo, and it leads you out onto this like incredibly long, incredibly rough road, like rocky dirt road. that goes on forever and ever and ever. And so we're going, at like a few kilometers per hour, just like inching down this road in our car with no four-wheel drive, just like wondering what's going on, and just getting like more and more uncomfortable because it's been a long travel day and we were just having a rough time. We finally get down this road and we get up to the gate, and there's a woman there who gets our name and lets us in, and then we like keep going down this road, and what we didn't know was that you do like another 8 minutes down that road. So we drove a little ways and we were getting agitated because we weren't seeing anything and we didn't know if we were in the right place, and so we turned around and we went back and we got directions and finally figured it out and drove that like 8 minutes down the road, and we got to this beautiful vineyard, and everybody there was absolutely just the most wonderful people. We got settled in. There's a hotel on site, the best hotel I've ever stayed at. It was so comfortable and so beautiful, and I just enjoyed every second of it. And then we got back in and they gave us a tour of the vineyard, which was really great. It was someone who was a family member of the owners who was giving us the tour. I got to ask her tons of questions about the vineyard. And then we went back in, and as we toured the winery area, we then ended up kind of in the cellar where we did a wine tasting. And then after we went back to the hotel and rested for a little while, we had this like incredible outdoor like 5-course dinner with wine pairings, and the kind of winemaker specialist was there, and there was a chef who was there. We talked to them and had a really amazing experience. It was just absolutely one of the most astonishing things that I've ever done, and we were just so happy coming out of it back to the hotel, and we got a great night's sleep. Woke up the next morning and there was an amazing breakfast there for us. I mean, the complaints that I had about the hotel outside of DC, like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you could provide everything, they had Wi-Fi, they had a delicious breakfast, and they had wine, so what more could you ask for? But we had a great breakfast the next morning, and then we took the direct route back to Monterey, which took maybe a couple, like 2.5 hours, and was very easy. There were a couple of like little towns we had to drive through, and there were like dogs everywhere and just people walking around, and it was just like these beautiful tiny little towns, and I really enjoyed just like driving through some of the more rural parts of Mexico and just like seeing what it was like. So then the last thing that we did before we left was on Wednesday night, we went and we met some of my in-laws' friends from their work at this restaurant called Fonda San Francisco, which is in Monterey, and it's like a fonda is like a budget kind of eatery, but this was like a really nice budget eatery, and a lot of like authentic Mexican food. I think the chef there is fairly well known, and it's just like a place where everybody you talk to says that they love that place. So we had this amazing dinner. We had eaten a little bit, and then our friends showed up and we had more food with them, and we just stayed out for hours just enjoying ourselves. Our flight the next day didn't leave until later in the morning, so we stayed up a little bit later because we didn't have to wake up at 3:30 in the morning, and we had an awesome time. And then on Thursday we got back on and we had our flight to Houston, and it was really easy. And then we had like 3 hours of layover between our flight to Houston and our flight back to DC, between our flight to Houston landing and our flight back to DC taking off. So Noah had said to me, do you want to like go up to the customer service desk and see if they can get us on an earlier flight? And I have never had any luck with anything like that. And I was like, oh yeah, we can, they won't have anything, but we definitely could. We could try. Well, what's the worst that can happen? They'll say they don't have anything. And so we went to the customer service desk, and she got us in our same seats on a flight leaving 90 minutes earlier, which was amazing because we were slated to land at 11 o'clock p.m. in DC. And what instead happened was that we landed 90 minutes earlier than that. It's about a 90-minute drive home. So we actually ended up pulling into our driveway at home at 11 p.m. instead of landing and then having another hour and a half to go. So it was like the best thing that could possibly have happened, like the best ending to the trip, because then the next day I had to work and I felt so much more refreshed than if I had gotten in at like 1:30 in the morning. And it was so great. I had a really great trip. I'm so happy to have gone to Monterey and seen my in-laws. I hope that I'll be able to go back there sometime soon. And I hope you enjoyed seeing the footage of my trip. We'll see you next time. Bye.